Most Jeep owners think thicker oil means better protection. In some engines, that's true. In others, it can actually cause problems. So we tested 0W-20, 5W-30, and 5W-40 across Jeep's most popular engines, and the results revealed one clear winner. And trust me, it wasn't what most owners expected. So let me show you what these three oils even do. Look at any oil bottle and you'll see something like 0W-20. That first number, the one with the little W, is the cold score. The W stands for winter, and it tells you how fast the oil moves the second you start the engine on a freezing morning. A 0 flows faster than a 5. A 5 flows faster than a 10. The second number is the hot score, which is how thick the oil stays once the engine gets blazing hot. So 0W-20 is thin cold and thin hot, and 5W-40 starts a bit slower in the cold, but it stays way thicker when everything heats up. Now why should you care about any of that? Because thin oil slips through the engine easily, so the parts waste less energy pushing it around. That's basically free gas mileage, and it's why new engines love it. However, thin oil also leaves a thinner safety layer between metal parts when things get rough. Thick oil does the opposite. It costs you a sip of fuel, but it lays down a stronger shield when the heat and pressure climb. There's even a simple rule mechanics use, where going one step thicker covers about a 20-degree jump in engine heat. Remember that, because it explains every winter coming up. And think of it like this. A thin oil is like water sliding through a straw, quick and easy. A thick oil is more like a milkshake, slower to move, but it really coats everything it touches. Neither one is better on its own. The right pick just depends on what your engine was built to handle. Now here comes the first engine, the 3.6 Pentastar. This is the most common Jeep motor alive, and it's sitting in the Wrangler, the Gladiator, and the Grand Cherokee. And its correct oil has actually changed 3 times. The earliest 2011 and 2012 versions wanted 5W-30. Then from 2013, it dropped to 5W-20. And from 2016, when Jeep gave it a redesign, it became 0W-20, meeting a Chrysler standard called MS6395. So your model year decides everything. But for any Pentastar from the last 10 years, the winner is 0W-20, full synthetic, with that MS6395 stamp. But here's a trap that catches a lot of people. The older Pentastar took 6 quarts of oil. The newer 2016 and up version only takes 5 quarts, because Jeep slimmed down the parts inside to save weight. Pour in the old amount and you'll overfill it, which causes its own headaches. This engine also has a real weak spot in its valve train, the little rocker arms and lifters up top. And it got so bad that owners filed a class action lawsuit covering the 2014 to 2020 models. Folks always ask if thicker oil quiets the famous Pentastar tick. It won't, because that's a parts problem, not an oil problem. So dumping 5W-30 in there just costs you mileage and fixes nothing. There's one more known headache on this engine worth a quick mention: the plastic oil filter housing that tends to crack and leak around the 50,000 mile mark. It's an annoying drip, but it's a cheap part, and it has nothing to do with which oil you choose. Next up is the little 2.0 turbo, and people mess this one up constantly. This tiny turbo 4-cylinder lives in the Wrangler, the Cherokee, and the 4xe hybrid, and it does not want thin oil at all. The factory answer is 5W-30, meeting a standard called MS13340, and it holds about 5.5 quarts. So even though half the Jeep family runs 0W-20, this little engine flips the rule completely. Drop 0W-20 in here because you figured all Jeeps match, and you've made a real mistake, not a smart choice. The reason is the turbo bolted to it. This is a small engine that gets force-fed air, runs hotter than you'd think, and it deals with a problem where a little gas sneaks into the oil and thins it out. Jeep even sent out a service action early on to swap out bad factory oil that was letting these engines knock and rattle. So the thicker 5W-30 gives the spinning turbo bearings the cushion they need. For the 2.0 turbo, the winner isn't close. It's 5W-30, and never anything thinner. If this is already saving you from the wrong pour, do me one quick favor and tap that subscribe button right now. Now let's keep rolling, because the next little engine has a dark secret. And right beside it sits the 2.4 Tigershark. This 4-cylinder powers a ton of everyday Jeeps, the Cherokee, the Compass, and the Renegade. It calls for thin 0W-20, meeting that same MS6395 standard, and it holds about 5.5 quarts. So far, that sounds boring, but this engine hides one of the scariest oil stories in the whole lineup. A lot of these motors drink oil, and some owners report losing close to a quart every 1,000 miles. It got bad enough that owners filed a class action lawsuit back in 2020. Here's the truly dangerous part, though. On many of these, the low oil warning light won't turn on until the engine has already dropped dangerously low. Sometimes, not until it actually stalls out. So you can be quietly running it half empty without a clue. And whatever you do, don't try to fix the thirst by pouring in thicker oil. This engine uses a fancy oil-driven valve system and a 2-stage oil pump that were both designed around thin 0W-20. Go heavier, and you can starve those parts when it's cold, which is the last thing a thirsty engine needs. For the 2.4 Tigershark, the winner is 0W-20, and the smart move is just checking your level often. Then we've got the big 5.7 Hemi. The legendary Hemi sits in the Grand Cherokee and a few other Jeeps, and it follows the same path as the Pentastar. From 2011 through 2021, it wanted 5W-20. Then, for 2022, it stepped down to 0W-20, both meeting MS6395, and it holds a steady 7 quarts. And that change had nothing to do with protection. It was all about chasing better gas mileage to pass government rules. But the Hemi hides a secret that makes oil choice a big deal. It uses a clever trick called MDS, which shuts off 4 of its 8 cylinders on the highway to save fuel. And that trick runs on oil pressure, using the oil itself to flip little switches deep in the engine. It was tuned for thin oil on purpose, so if you get cute and pour 5W-30 or 10W-30 into a Hemi, you can actually confuse that system, throw warning lights, and mess up how it shuts down cylinders. For a modern Hemi, the winner is the thin grade the system was built around, either 5W-20 or 0W-20, depending on your year. This is the one engine where going thicker is a real risk, not a clever upgrade. And here's a detail almost nobody catches. The same basic Hemi in a heavy-duty Ram truck actually calls for 5W-30 from the factory. That right there tells you the thin oil in your Jeep was picked to win on fuel mileage, not because the engine couldn't handle a little more. But the MDS system in your Grand Cherokee still needs that thin grade, so leave it alone anyway. Quick pause. If you're serious about making your Jeep last as long as possible, check out my 500,000-mile Jeep blueprint. It's the same guide thousands of owners are using to avoid expensive mistakes, stay ahead of common failures, and keep their Jeep running strong. The link is in the description below. And that takes us to the monster, the 6.4-liter 392. Now the whole rulebook flips. This is the giant V8 in the Wrangler 392 and the Grand Cherokee SRT, a beast that runs hot and works hard. So Jeep calls for a much heavier oil, full synthetic 0W-40, meeting a standard called MS12633, also at 7 quarts. Same family, wildly different oil philosophy from everything before it. Here's a myth worth crushing right now. Loads of forum chatter swears that MS12633 secretly needs a special high moly oil stuffed with extra additives. That's just not true at all. It's only a tough endurance test, not some secret recipe. So you don't need a fancy boutique blend. You only need a quality 0W-40 that actually carries the MS12633 approval. This engine also burns through oil faster if you drive it the fun way, with severe duty changes dropping as low as 4,000 miles. For the 392, the winner is the thick stuff. It's 0W-40, with no shortcuts. But the engine that proves my whole point is the 3.0 Hurricane. This is the one that ends the entire argument. And it's the newest motor in the family, a twin-turbo inline-6, replacing the V8s in the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. Here's the part that should make your jaw drop. The Hurricane comes in 2 versions, standard output and high output, built on the same exact block. And Jeep gives them 2 completely different oils. The standard output, making around 420 horsepower, wants thin 0W-20, meeting MS6395. But the high output, pushing up to 540 horsepower, demands thick 0W-40, meeting a newer standard called MSA0921. Both hold the same 7.5 quarts. Same engine bones, same family. Yet one wants the thinnest oil in the lineup, while the other wants nearly the thickest. So why the split? Because the high output runs more boost and more heat, so it needs that heavier shield around its bearings. The standard output stays cooler and chases mileage instead. And let me wave a flag here, because there's bad info floating around online. A few sites claim the Hurricane takes 0W-30, meeting MS 13,340. That claim is completely wrong. MS 13,340 belongs to the little 2.0 turbo, and it has nothing to do with this engine. So if you own a Hurricane, ignore that nonsense and match your oil to whether you've got the standard or the high output. These engines don't even have a normal dipstick, by the way. They check the oil level with a sensor. The Hurricane is the cleanest proof of all. One winner simply can't exist because the same 6-cylinder block takes 2 different oils. Now let's talk diesel, the 3.0 ECO diesel. This turbo diesel V6 powers the Wrangler, the Gladiator, and the Grand Cherokee, and it plays by diesel rules entirely. The winner here is full synthetic 5W-40, meeting a Chrysler standard called MS 12991, and it swallows a big 9 quarts in the Jeep versions. So this is the only engine in the whole bunch where 5W-40 is the factory answer, not some experiment. There's a wild history lesson buried in here too. The earliest EcoDiesels were originally set up for 5W-30, but Jeep changed its mind later and bumped it to 5W-40 through a service bulletin, sending owners to dealers who drained the old oil and stuck a 5W-40 sticker right on the fill cap. So if you've got an early one, the manual in your glove box might be out of date. This diesel's known weak point is the oil cooler, which can overheat when you drag a heavy trailer up long mountain grades. When that cooler gets cranky, it can dump oil and coolant where they shouldn't mix, which turns into a pricey repair fast. So fresh, correct oil matters more here than almost anywhere. For the EcoDiesel, the winner is 5W-40, plain and simple. And for the old-timers, there's the 4.0 inline 6. If you're rolling in a classic Cherokee or an older Wrangler with the legendary 4.0 liter, you live in a totally different world. This old inline 6, built all the way through 2006, was made for 10W-30, with a lighter 5W-30 only in genuinely cold weather. It takes 6 quarts, and this is the one engine where the old-timer instinct to run thicker actually holds up. Why does it work here? Because this is an old, simple design with loose clearances inside and none of the fancy timing or fuel-saving oil tricks the modern engines lean on. So there's nothing delicate to upset. Plenty of high-mileage 4.0 owners run a thicker grade, sometimes a 10W-40 or even a diesel oil, to quiet a worn engine or slow a leak in brutal heat. That's a fair move on a motor this old and this tough. For a healthy 4.0, the factory winner is 10W-30. For a tired, high-mileage one baking in the desert, stepping up a grade is totally reasonable. So when does thicker oil actually win the fight? Across this whole lineup, going heavier than the factory number only makes sense in a few cases. The first is an old, high-mileage engine with worn, roomy clearances, like that 4.0. The second is heavy towing in serious heat, where the extra cushion protects under the strain. And the third is hard track or desert punishment. Remember that rule from earlier, where 1 grade thicker covers about a 20-degree heat jump? So if you're hauling a trailer through summer mountains all day, a slightly heavier oil isn't crazy at all. Say you've got an older Grand Cherokee well past its warranty, and you tow a camper across the desert every summer. Bumping from a 20 grade to a 30 grade for that kind of duty is a defensible call, and plenty of seasoned owners do exactly that. One more thing on all of these. Almost every modern Jeep engine wants full synthetic oil, not the cheap conventional stuff, so don't try to save a few bucks there. But here's the hard limit nobody respects. Never thicken the oil in an engine whose inner switches were tuned for thin oil. That means the MDS Hemi and the 2.0 turbo's oil-driven tricks. In those engines, a heavier cold oil can actually starve those parts at startup, doing the exact opposite of what you wanted. There's a real warning here, because folks have toasted valve gear on these multi-air style engines by guessing on oil weight. So thicker can win, but only on the right engine, and almost always after the warranty's gone. And here's the warranty thing almost nobody tells you. This part saves real money, so listen close. Thanks to a federal law called the Magnuson-Moss Act, a car maker can't void your warranty just because you used an off-brand oil instead of their pricey dealer bottle. So any oil from any brand is fine, as long as it meets the right spec printed on the back, meaning that MS number and the API mark. The brand doesn't matter to your warranty one bit. The spec is what counts. However, there are two catches you've got to respect. First, the oil still has to match the correct thickness your engine was built for. And second, if your engine blows up, the car maker can only deny that claim if they prove the oil caused the failure. So if you run the wrong weight and the bottom end lets go, you've handed them an opening to fight you. That's exactly why smart owners keep their dated oil receipts that list the spec, and why most people wait until the warranty ends before they start playing with thicker oil. One quick tip on reading the bottle. You want to see both the API certification mark and the correct viscosity number on the label. An oil missing either one of those is an oil you shouldn't be running in a newer Jeep. Get both right and the brand on the front genuinely doesn't matter. So here's the one simple rule for every Jeep engine. There was never going to be a single winner, and anyone selling you one magic bottle for every Jeep is selling you a problem. The 0W-20 wins for the modern Pentastar, the 2.4 Tigershark, the 2022 and up Hemi, and the Hurricane standard output. The 5W-30 wins for the little 2.0 turbo, all by itself. The 0W-40 wins for the 392 and the Hurricane high output. The 5W-40 wins for the diesel. And the 10W-30 wins for the old 4.0. There's even a cheat code for all of it. Your oil fill cap has the right grade printed right on top, so when in doubt, pop the hood and read it. Use the exact grade and the exact spec your engine was built for, because that's the only oil that was ever truly the winner. And one last thing before you go. Most of these Jeeps run an oil life monitor that'll ask for a change somewhere around the 10,000 mile mark. But if you tow heavy, off-road in the dust, or sit in traffic all summer, cut that closer to 5,000 or 6,000. Clean oil of the right grade beats fancy oil of the wrong one every single time. And there you have it. The best oil isn't the thickest or the thinnest. It's the one your Jeep was designed to use. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what oil you're running. Thanks for watching, and tap the screen for the next video. I'll see you there.